All right. Shall we talk about some Rise of the Ronin? Because
Yeah, man. So Ken, can you go over real quick for anybody who's new to the live what exactly the embargo is for you and what you're able to talk about, and then you can just
Yeah.
sort of give us your full unbridled impressions in that regard. We'll just let you run with it, man.
So when the preview embargo was up like March 11th, March 13th, and it's basically said you can't talk about the game anywhere beyond this particular mission. But like the rest of the open world was free to
Hmm.
explore. You could do side missions. So I was allowed to talk about the combat and kind of different systems in the game. So yeah, as I said, I've been playing it for about like 26, 30 hours. You kind of start off in the Yokohama area, and it's a pretty massive game. And this is kind of, I suppose, Team Ninja's real first kind of open world game in that sense.
Mhm.
And so I think the media thing that you notice is the combat, and it's definitely trying to appeal to a wide audience. And I think from that point of view, I think they do a really great job because it can be challenging. Definitely moments where there's a particular mini boss that you're fighting, and you're like, it's similar to, it's kind of a smaller version of the Nemesis system. They have a vendetta thing where if you get killed by a mini
Oh, that's
boss or even
cool.
just a
Mm.
character, uh, basically you have a vendetta against them, and instead of say having to kill them to regain your karma, which is what you call in this game, karma is what you're kind of you level up with. So as karma goes up, you get skill points and stuff. When you get, I think it's about halfway of their health down, you regain that karma. And so, as I said, every single time I died, I was like, I'm gonna get that asshole. I'm gonna get him. Like, I had that compulsion to go back, and sometimes I died 2 or 3 times. I was like, God damn, this guy is tough. Yeah, like there was one guy, he's like some American general or whatever, and he was whooping my ass. And I was like, and even again, this was something I just I encountered. I didn't. It wasn't like a marker in the map. I was just going around the world. There was these two smaller enemies that I killed, and then this guy came out, and I was like, "Ah, oh, I'll have no problem with him." And then he whooped my ass, and so I went back 2 or 3 times. Eventually, I got him, and I was like, "Oh, that was very satisfying." So I think the combat is very good. Parry is a big part of it. So you usually, the way it works is they usually have a combo, and so it saves like 3 hits. If you can parry those combos at the correct timing, they kind of get staggered or whatever it is, and basically it leaves them open for a shot to you can get a combo win or whatever it is. And sometimes it can be difficult because they could like do two fast swipe to the blade, and then one that's a bit staggered. So it can be tough to get the actual timing. But once you get it, it's pretty powerful. Like if you can actually get the parrying down, it's pretty good. Um, so yeah, I think I just even going around each area has like in the map has like public order where essentially there's like a group of bandits who have taken over the area, and once you restore order, like The Witcher, when you do like a village or something and that's taken over by bandits, once you complete that, you see all the people flock back to this town because the bandits are gone. So just loads of that around the map. But once you restore order in an area, that then opens up like those different side missions or different side activities you can do in the game. But in terms of what you're actually doing, there's at the start of the game you have your kind of blade twin that they call it, which is essentially someone who you were trained with by this old blacksmith woman who basically she trained both of you, and so you kind of have you're like connected, you're like a kindred spirit, and essentially you thought she died. But she actually goes off, and you're kind of on this quest to find her. So that's the loose thread of the game is like you're trying to find her and you find more information about her. But beyond that, there's lots of different side missions, side activities. So there's one that's been talked about a lot that Destin Legary actually talked about, which is you do the side mission where you basically find that this ruffian is, he's like he's causing havoc in a particular area, and you take down his gang, and you can also take him down. And his name is Gonzo. He's a bit of a character, and he's saying once you get him down, he's basically like, no, listen, listen, I can help you out because you're basically trying to find his storehouse to get into Yokohama. Yeah, you need this permit to get into Yokohama, and essentially you find out that you can decide to kill him, or you can listen to more of what he's saying, and then he'll give you more info about. Well, I also have guns and money and ammo if you want that as well. So I said, you know what, let's not kill this guy, and let's see what happens. So then I continue on the game, and then about like an hour later, I see a little icon that appears. This is outside the city now, outside of Yokohama, And again, this guy is like saying, "Oh, this gang has come into the town and is wrecking havoc, and we really need your help." And guess who it is? It's Gonzo. And again, I could have killed him straight up, and he would have been completely gone from the game. But instead, this time we decided to. We had a bit of a heart to heart, and I said, "Listen." I was kind of, it was kind of the way I was looking at it is, you have those friends who's, maybe gone down the wrong path or has lost their way. It's like, listen, man, I see where you're coming from, but, I'll give you a second chance, So I gave him a second chance and he becomes an ally. So then what happens is when you're doing the main missions, that's the point where you can do co-op. And so you can invite people to your game and you can play together. But if you're just playing single player, you have two allies that you can choose from. So Gonzo is now an ally that I can call on when they're doing the main mission. So I thought that was very cool and a nice little wrinkle to the story in terms of the choices you make and everything.
Yeah.
But I think the combat is definitely the big part of this. In terms of the open world, I would say it is fairly formulaic in terms of what you're doing. Like when I started out, it was like, I think it's actually quite reserved and they don't populate the map with like so many question marks like a Ubisoft game. But then the longer you play, you realize, okay, this is just the same thing but on a much larger scale because there's a fog of war on the map, so you don't see every area. But as you progress, you actually see that this is a much bigger map than you initially expected. So it's not going to win any points for like incredible open world design, doing anything new. But overall, I think it's a really fun game. The combat is very engaging, and I think the setting is quite cool. And obviously, the comparison that everyone is going to bring up is Ghost of Tsushima, right? But I think this is going for a different approach because I think the setting is actually really cool because it's like you're seeing Japan changing. It's like around 1856, around that time, 1850s, and you're basically seeing Japan open up to the world. So you see these American ships that are kind of outside on the Japanese coast, and so it's like, are they going to sign a trade deal with the US and open themselves up? And so you're kind of seeing this way of life kind of basically disappearing, or like, again, are they going to evolve? So you have pro shogunate and you have anti shogunate. So people who want things to stay the same, kind of want people Japan to be closed off, or they want people to actually embrace the new world, embrace these new technologies. And so what's cool is you do certain missions. And for example, I did a mission where I think it was like there was this particular letter where it was like, again, surrounding what was going to happen with the fate of Japan. And I had the choice once I kind of infiltrated this area with the letter, am I going to give it to the pro shogunate or the anti shogunate? And so again, you have that choice of like, which side do you want to kind of favor? So it's really interesting in that sense that it kind of splits out into these two different camps. So from what I've seen, I think I really enjoy the characters here. And a lot of them are based on real world characters from that time, different samurais. Someone asked how stable the frame rate is. Yeah, so I can talk about that first. So yeah, there's performance mode, which is 60 FPS. There's quality mode, 30 FPS. And then there's a ray tracing mode, which, as I said before, I don't really understand why they have it because there's not really much opportunities to have ray tracing.
Well, that would be like water and things like that, right?
Yeah,
like
but even again, I did it, and it's not even that noticeable.
Yeah.
But performance mode, it definitely is quite choppy at times. Again, the comparison I was saying, it's not as bad as something like Survivor, where that could barely hold the frame rate for most of the game. Jedi Survivor, yeah. So I think it depends on like how much that kind of stuff affects you. Like if you're like someone who is like, I can't play this, like it's not going to ground to a halt in terms of the frame rate, but you're going to notice some dips here and there. And there's also pop in as well. So especially when you're on the horse, because you're going to go quite fast, you do see in the distance the quality of some of the buildings is not there, but the closer you get it kind of the detail gets better as you go. So again, I don't think it's anything that's like going to destroy the experience, because I think the combat and the story is really interesting and it's a lot of fun to play. But it's just based on, if you're someone who's really sensitive to that kind of stuff, maybe you might play it on quality mode so you don't see that dip as much, and you just can kind of
but the thing about that is I saw that Eric said that they did play it on quality and then they had trouble getting consistently 30. So it's like you don't even really get the option to play it that way and have a consistent frame rate. So there does seem to be, I think that's what the most negative discourse about the game is sort of the lack of optimization with the game design. And I think that maybe they've just been a little bit ambitious with all the systems that you're talking about with the open world and things like that, that do evolve sort of their formula that they've done with their last 3 games to a large extent. It seems like maybe they, overshot a little bit in terms of what the performance is going to be on the hardware with a game like that, even if it's not, blowing everybody away with the visuals. They are sort of reaching a little bit for what they've done in the past. Like, again, this is not Sucker Punch. This is not Sony Santa Monica. So, Koei Tecmo and Team Ninja are doing what they can do. They're making the game that they can make. And it seems like, with this one, it really is impressive in a lot of ways, but the performance is kind of suffering to some extent for that. But you're saying it wasn't game breaking for you. Like, it didn't ruin your enjoyment in any regard.
Definitely not. No, and again, it's one of those things, I suppose, you just kind of get used to, especially with the pop-in and that kind of stuff. You kind of just like, okay, but I don't think it's like, there was one particular area I was saying that it was kind of up on the mountains and you got a good kind of view of Yokohama. And for some reason, there was a lot more dip than most areas. But again, I think it's probably like, again, sometimes it can run really smooth, like when you're just running around, you're like, oh, that's nice. And then other times it can dip. But it's not like one of those things where it's like so jarring, where it's like, this is just dropping all the time. This is ridiculous. It's one of those more nuanced things that you're like, yeah, it's a perfect no, but it's not an absolute disaster,
It's more noticeable, like, now that we have games that are consistently 60, right?
Exactly.
Like before, Sekiro was just 40, 45, and that's just what it was.
Yeah.
And now it's like, well, we've kind of been spoiled to a degree, and so it's hard to go back, I think. But can you elaborate a little bit on that companion system? And then I don't think that a lot of people were, myself included, were expecting this to be like a make choices, see consequences game, but it sounds like there's some elements of that here. So I'd love to hear more about that from your experience.
Yeah, so the companion system is called the bond system in this game. So it's essentially you meet characters as some of them are like historical characters, from the past, and essentially you kind of do a mission with them, and there's actually bond missions, particularly, that will actually increase the bond you have with someone. And the way that works is actually you learn different combat styles and stances from these different people. So you basically also have this hub area in Yokohama, which is like a longhouse, and so you can change your appearance there. You can put new armor on. You have a little area you can decorate and put up, different paintings and stuff. But you also get an opportunity to talk to your allies, and if your bond grows with them, you can unlock new weapons or learn new fighting styles and stuff like that. So yeah, I was definitely surprised with that element, just how deep that is, the bond system. And as you can kind of, especially for certain missions, maybe someone has like better, like I just did a stealth mission, and so maybe you want to pick a companion that is better for stealth, so they have bonuses towards that. So you can bring 2 with you, but you can choose from the ones you already have. So again, it's like, which one is best for this particular mission? If it's going to be all guns blazing, you're going to be, maybe you want someone who has, who's really skilled with the blade, or maybe you want someone who's maybe has ninja stars, or, has stuff geared towards stealth. So it is really cool system, and like, it's fun just to, like, they're very eccentric, these characters. I like them as well. Like, for example, this is, actually, no, I can't really say it because I think it's the main mission, but yeah, I'll just say that you have a fight with a drunk guy, and it's quite funny. And so there's a bit of humor there as well, and like, again, he becomes an ally later on, and so you get to kind of learn more about him. And then he even says himself, yeah, I should probably cut down the drinking, but I wouldn't be as fun or whatever. So it's kind of, there's a lot of good characters, and it is fun to spend time with them. And as you said, the more time you spend with them, the more different abilities you can get and different stances. So I think it's a really well done system. And I think from that point of view, I think the combat, I think the upgrades are really good in this game in terms of actually meaningful. There is some that are like, you're 10% to stagger and 10%, but there is other ones that are like really cool, like moves, maybe like a mid-air execution, or like you can, there was one that I unlocked, which was like, when you're doing when you get their stamina, which is called key in this game, when you get their stamina bar down, you can put in a critical hit. They don't always die because maybe they have a bigger health bar, so you get a good portion of their health down. But there's one upgrade you can unlock, which is when you do a critical hit, your ally also does a critical hit on them at the same time. So maybe that's the extra hit you need to actually kill them instead of, just getting a good bit of their health down. So I think the upgrade system is really meaningful, and I think people are going to really enjoy that. You can see it here. You can also upgrade your grapple to, you can basically, if they're, again, when their stamina is completely depleted, you can grapple them and swing them around and like throw them at enemies and stuff as well. So I think this isn't Ghost of Tsushima in terms of like it's all about the weight of the sword and like it's very much methodical. This is all about action focused and like flying around. Like some of the combos that they have are like not physically possible because they're so fast. They're like, ooh, really, really fast. But I think they really just nail that kind of fun action, very fast paced combat that they're going for. So I think it's not Ghost of Tsushima as in being more methodical. So I think they do a good job of that.
Well, and again, those choices, you don't get that with Ghost, and you don't get that with Sekiro. So I know that you were not able to and are not able to talk about the rest of the main missions and the main narrative through line after a certain point. But as far as like you said, you did a bunch of side content with some goofy and fulfilling sort of storylines and stuff there. Did you notice like that you were getting asked to make certain decisions? Like you talked about the guy that can be one of your companions, but do you see a lot of instances of that where you're having choices put in front of you and then you're seeing some sort of effect of that like in the actual game that you play after that?
Yeah, so I would say it's kind of patchy in that sense in terms of like some side missions. It's like I did one where it was this guy lost his clothes and you have to get his clothes back, and like, is that going to have a big impact on the game later on? Probably not. He obviously becomes an ally. You get a bond with him, but it's not going to be like a huge turning point. But as I said, that Gonzo mission was really, that was a big turning point. I could have just killed him from the very start, never hear from him again. But as I said, in the main missions, what they're doing now, it's like pro shogunate, anti shogunate, so you can choose who you want to side with. Is that for every mission? I don't know on a larger scale. Does that, is it like, something, what Bethesda game or like Fallout New Vegas, where it's like every single mission has this huge consequence? Probably not. But I think there's enough here from what I played that it's definitely good. As you said, you can probably replay the game and there's going to be a different outcome depending on who you side with. Wasn't there a similar thing it wasn't that deep, but in Assassin's Creed Odyssey, wasn't there like you could side with the Athenians or the Spartans kind of thing?
Something like that.
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah, but do you think there's going to be like world state effects or like changes based on the which side you're supporting, or do you think it's just going to be like at the very end you might get a different ending or something like that?
Yeah, it's probably going to be a more ending thing because what's interesting at this point is like, even though there's still kind of these two factions of like, should they, side more at the West or, stay close to Japanese culture, you're still already seeing the huge influence that the Western culture has had in terms of the buildings in the cities and stuff like that. It's definitely still like they've kind of already opened up, if you know what I mean. Yeah. But it's more, do they want to continue down that path or do they want to pull back and decide to be more on their own? So yeah, again, it's kind of hard to tell where it's going to lead, but there's definitely enough here that at different points of the story, based on what you do, it's probably going to be like, because what's cool is they also have like a timeline. Say if you just forget what happened again before last time playing, there's a timeline of the major events. And again, what's cool is like it's historical, like in terms of based on what happens if you decide on one faction, history is going to happen either way. So that will on that timeline. But like on that timeline, you can go back and say, oh yeah, so that's what happened when I made that decision.
One of the first characters you meet, right, is like a really significant historical figure in Japan.
I think it's like Ryuza Sakamoto, something like that. He was a well-known, Ronin or a ninja or kind of samurai at the time, and he obviously, I just looked up a picture of him. He looks nothing like the real guy because he's very flamboyant. He has like long hair and he's a bit of a character. He's like, oh hey man, we're on the same side. Let's go to Yokohama together. So yeah, and there's definitely again with the American side of things, there's a guy who has something Harris that you meet who is like a diplomat, a U.S. diplomat, and again how do you want to kind of interact with him? How's that going to turn out? There's an element to it as well. So yeah, I think they do a good job of like having these historical characters, but also make them larger than life. There's no point of having these be, being very banal and boring characters that you're like, just give you exposition for 20 minutes. You're like, okay, this is just boring me to tears. They're very, funny and peculiar characters. So like the guy who does all these inventions is like, he's kind of what you expect. He's like, oh, I get this great idea for like this new, he's very, he's like, okay, calm down. He's very eccentric, and you kind of want to come back to him to see what he's going to whip up next. So I think for me that hook is really cool. Oh, is
so with the combat, with the storytelling you're talking about, with all the characters and the developments there, the companions, the personality, Dave asked, do you think this is a step up or step down from the Neo games? I think I know what your answer is going to be, but yeah, what do you feel like comparatively to those, since it's the same studio, I think, and do you recommend the game, at full price?
Yeah, so if anyone is expecting Neo going into this game, this is not Neo 3 or Neo 4 or whatever. Okay. It's a very different game. There's definitely elements that they kind of bring with it in terms of like the combat is fairly fast paced, and definitely like you do have to concentrate. You can't just like hack and slash and hope for the best. You do have to concentrate and look at the way they're attacking you. And there's obviously like a red flashing attack you can't parry, but you can dodge. But it's definitely a more kind of accessible combat system here, where it's not going for this Souls like where you're gonna spend like 2 hours just to beat one boss. It's definitely trying to be more accessible. And I think as someone who, I wouldn't be a huge Souls fan in general in that sense, so for someone from that point of view, I think it's nice that they've been able to kind of still have a challenge to the difficulty, and obviously you can put it on hard mode if you really want.
There's an easy mode, yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
so people know that. Yeah,
they call it like dusk and dawn. It's basically easy, normal, hard. I'm playing normal mode, but if you want, I suppose you want more of a challenge,
easy baby mode.
Yeah, exactly, baby mode. So you can play on that, whatever you want. But it's definitely not like trying to replicate Neo here at all. There is a similarity in terms of you get the amount of like swords you get in this game and equipment is like, it's hilarious. Like, again, I like when I was doing the preview, I think I had played maybe 10 hours, and I counted and I had 35 weapons. And some of them are like just 79 version of a katana, and it's the same katana, but you have like a 90. It's the power of it is 90, so it's the same weapon, but just one is a bit better. But then you just get all these different pikes, and you get bayonettas, and like all these different weapons. So after a while, I was just like, I think this is cool because at least there's variety to it, and I can mix and match. Because obviously some games maybe they make you work harder for it, and it's like, when you able to grind out and get that particular weapon that you want, it's really satisfying. But the approach they're going for here is just like, we're just going to throw all this crap at you, and same with armor as well. There's so many different armor sets, and there's what you're wearing here and the armor. So you can also do transmog as well. So in terms of you have your look, but you can also change your armor if you want to upgrade it, like, or have a more heavy armor that's going to get you better protection, but it's not going to change your look. So you can keep the look, but also have the upgraded armor that you want as well. So yeah, it's not Neo if you're thinking it's going to be Neo 3. But I think what they do here, I think, is a really good job, especially with the combat and the upgrade system. That maybe you might be pleasantly surprised here that, okay, fine, I'm disappointed it's not Neo, but I actually am really enjoying the combat because there's still a challenge here. It's different, but it's still really fun to play. So that's what I'd say. It's not Neo, and comparing it to like which is a better game. Again, I think they're serving two different sets of people.
Seems like you really enjoyed the story and those sort of elements, and all the characters and the personality as well.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's like, again, it's not flawless. Not like it's not like the characters you get in Rebirth or something like that. But again, I suppose for their first real try at kind of trying to have those really interesting, engaging characters that you want to see more of, I think they did a good job. So yeah.